Hello, Kensington Club. It is a beautiful day here in Montgomery County, Maryland. My name is Dana, and I would like to welcome you to this week's Kensington Club on Screen. This week, our theme is Autumn's Arrival, and if you have been outside, you have noticed that autumn is, in fact, here. So this week, we'll talk about the high holidays in autumn. We'll talk about the signs to look for in nature that autumn is here. We'll also learn how to bake an apple crisp with Rosie. We'll laugh with Sharon. We'll get an art lesson with Annie. We'll hear from Ellis, and we'll get a workout at the Kensington Club Gym. So thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this week's program. As the days get shorter and the nights get longer and the temperature slowly drops, it's easy to tell that autumn is here. And today we're going to take a look at what happens in our neighborhoods, in our environments, and in nature as the season changes. Meteorologically speaking, autumn is said to begin on the 1st of September and last until November 30th. Probably the most familiar sign of autumn is the changing leaves. This change in the leaves is a visible sign of the chemical changes going on inside plants and trees as they prepare for winter. And one benefit of all of this is that we get to see lots of vibrant colors, just like these on the screen. What's your favorite autumn leaf color? It might be red or yellow. Mine is orange, just like this one. Actually, orange is one of the most common fall colors, and you can see lots of orange at farm stands and in fall gardens as well. You'll see pumpkins and gourds and squash in abundance. If you look overhead in autumn, you might see flocks of birds and hear the calls of geese as they fly. Hawks, geese, and swallows are migrating south for the winter. And the hummingbirds are also leaving for a warmer climate. You might see deer in your backyard, or maybe the foraging squirrels are looking for acorns in your neighborhood. Acorns are on the ground right now because they fall from the trees and they germinate in autumn. Each acorn is a tiny oak tree seed, and because they fall from the trees, the acorn itself must provide its own energy for root growth. Let's take a look at some fall flowers. Maybe you like chrysanthemums. I always know it's fall when my neighbor puts her fall wreath on the door. Maybe you have a fall wreath. We can also see fall in the cornstalks and the goldenrod. As you can see, fall is all around us. I hope you enjoy the season. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Kensington Club members. Last month, we started talking about Edward Hopper and his art of isolation and why people call him the quarantine artist. And we're going to get on to the second half of that presentation today. I hope you enjoy it. This is one inspired by Cape Cod. He traveled there a lot. Between the 1930s and the 1950s, he and his wife Jo pretty much spent all their summers in Cape Cod. So there's a really interesting mix in his body of work between city pictures in New York, beachy, airy Cape Cod pictures, and then paintings that he did on short road trips when he would go driving for the weekend to get inspiration. And we'll look at one of those later. But this is definitely a Cape Cod-based picture. Again, we see two figures, both women here. He often used his wife, Jo, as a model for women in his paintings, even though he never he only one time painted her specifically as a portrait, but he regularly used her as a model to get the lines of women's bodies just right, to get the poses right, to get the shading right. So Edward Hopper, even though he was working in the early to mid 1900s when abstract art was really popular, he didn't really subscribe to abstract art. He uses pieces of it, he simplifies certain facets of his art to get the point across more simply. But he wanted figures and buildings and lighting to be as realistic as he could get them. So before you would ever get to an oil painting like this, he could have as many as 50 or 60 studies drawn of what he wanted to paint so that he could get the shape of it just right, the color just right, the shading just right, which is why his paintings are so successful at looking realistic, even though sometimes they lack in a little bit of detail. So for example, here, there's no shingles on the roof, there's no texture on the building, but that's not really where we're looking in this picture. We're looking at the overall sense of the building and the light and the trees, and then we're focusing again on these tiny little people here. So he has this really excellent way of making the characters small, but interesting enough to pull our focus right to them and think, what are they up to? What's her story? What is she doing? Here, you could look at this and say, oh, that's a young woman with her grandmother. The grandma's reading. The woman's in a bikini. I wonder what conversation is being had between them. I wonder what they're both feeling. Wonder what they're trying to do. And that sense of wonder, of making you curious about their story, that's how you know an Edward Hopper painting when you see it. It just makes you curious. This one's also funny, but it gets across a couple of the points that I've mentioned before. So this one is very clearly of a building in New York. And here we are the voyeurs, kind of, right? Like we talked about in the first picture, Nighthawks, that there was a sense that someone was kind of looking at the diners. Here, that's very clearly what's happening, right? Someone is spying into the windows of this woman here who is probably getting dressed. And in a city like New York, that can be a really common scene. So it's not so unusual that he would paint this, but again, I think it's a really beautiful example of why he's such a famous painter, because so much of the actual composition of this painting is just dark brown and kind of ugly. But it's still a beautiful painting because our eye is drawn right in to the bright yellow of the windows, the bright red, the flowing curtain. He knows how to draw our eyes where they need to be to tell a story without needing to make the main focus take up the whole picture. And that provides a little extra context to us, right? So if he had just painted the woman getting dressed, we'd say, oh, that's a weird picture. But with the added context of the windows around it, we think beyond what he's actually showing back to who's looking at this and what's the story there. And it gives it almost a little bit of like a seedy or tawdry feeling in a way, which I think is just really interesting and probably fairly reminiscent of New York City life around 1928. I didn't mention it before, but it is written on the screen. This one is titled Night Windows from 1928, and it is part of the collection at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. MoMA does have a pretty good selection of Edward Hopper paintings if you ever make it there and want to see more of his work. Now this one we've looked at before. We actually looked at it last week when we discussed images of America, but I wanted to show it again just as another example of the ways that Edward Hopper depicts light and loneliness and American life. So we've got here a gas station from the 1940s. We know it's from the 1940s just by the style of it. And it's kind of along this isolated country road with just enough light shining both in the sky and in the buildings to let us know it's probably dawn or dusk, one of those transitional in-between times. And we've just got the one man here, no cars. But again, it doesn't feel lonely. It feels isolated, but it doesn't feel sad. And that's because Hopper puts this brightness and lightness in his paintings that just, I don't know, to me, they feel very personal and nostalgic and expressive. So whenever I see one of his paintings, I can't always recognize them right away, but when I know it's an Edward Hopper, it's from the light and that sense of airy spaciousness with like an isolated figure or no people at all. All the ones we're looking at today have at least one person in them, but notice that none of the pictures we looked at with all the people in them have people interacting. They are always either physically distant or emotionally distant from each other, which is again why I think that Edward Hopper right now has been getting attention as like the quarantine artist, the artist for coronavirus times, because I think there's a sense in which we can all feel a little bit isolated, a little bit lonely, but that it doesn't have to be a sad, horrible thing, because we all know that we are doing what's best to keep each other safe and healthy. And that comes from a place of love. We're going to look at one more painting today. My favorite Edward Hopper painting. It is also one that we've looked at before, but I think that there's so much in it that it is worth looking at anytime we talk about a relevant topic to him. And that is this painting titled New York Movie. It's from 1939, also part of the collection at the Museum of Modern Art. And usually when we look at this painting, we're looking at it when we talk about the ways different artists use light, which, I mean, I could just show 5 Edward Hopper pictures for that discussion because his use of light is very interesting and dramatic. He actually said once, let me find my quote. He said, "I guess I'm not very human. All I really want to do is paint light on the side of a house." And you can see that in a lot of his paintings, that there's almost always like a building with interesting lighting on it. And that includes here. We've got this really interesting lighting by the woman and lighting up above here. I've read a couple of quotes by him where, you know, people are analyzing his work and he gets mad about it, basically saying like, I didn't even want to include the people. I just put them in as an afterthought. But the people in his paintings is what really draws us viewers in. So let's go back to this one for a minute. I love this painting because the main star of the narrative here is this woman in blue, and she only takes up the last maybe 15% of the picture. All this over here, you don't even notice it at first, even though it's the bulk of the painting. But our eye, which normally kind of goes to the center of a painting, well, the center is right here, this big dark pillar. Boring, okay? So our eye is pulled over here between the light yellow light and the red of the curtains and the blue of her outfit, that's where our eye goes right away. And because of that, she's the star of the picture, even though there's a lot more going on there. We're meant to look at her and think, what's she doing? What's going on? And I've heard a million different guesses as to what her story is. Some people say she's waiting for someone, or she's just not ready to go into the movie yet, or she's in line for the bathroom. Some people just think she's, what do they call it? Like a bellhop, but that's not it. You know, someone who works in the aisles of a theater, which could be based on her outfit. Her shoes are a little fancy for that, though. And I don't know what the real story of her is, because Edward Hopper would never tell us. What I do know is that this is a beautiful painting to look and stare at and wonder what her story is and come up with your own version of what it is. And he is completely encouraging that by shining this light on her and keeping all these other people, which there are several other people in this painting that you don't even notice at first, they're in the dark. Again, this one was titled New York Movie, which you might not have picked up on right away, but there is a movie screen over here, some very fancy lighting and doors, and these are the seats of the theater. Very different than a modern movie theater, obviously. Much more ornate, intricate. So he just does a really great job capturing his time. But Edward Hopper was very conservative, both in politics and social matters. And so he really accepted things as they were. He was not an idealist. He just wanted to show the world as he saw it. He gets compared a lot to Norman Rockwell, and he actually really did not like that comparison because he felt that Rockwell was too idealistic, too nostalgic. He would kind of distort things towards the really positive, which Edward Hopper didn't want to do. And there are plenty of people who met him in his life who said that he was kind of grumpy, a misanthrope. But he's a really beloved American artist for the way in which he showed those scenes of American life imbued with those feelings that we all have sometimes of feeling separate or isolated or lonely, and not making them dark, depressing pictures. They're still lovely pictures to look at, and there's a lot of story that can be told through them. So I hope you enjoyed our little overview of American artist Edward Hopper today, and have a great day.
Hi, welcome to Celebrate with Susan. It's time for the Jewish New Year, the year 5781 according to the Jewish calendar. It's Jewish tradition to eat a round challah with raisins and apples dipped in honey to celebrate a sweet new year. The Jewish New Year begins the first and second day of Tishri, which is the 7th month of the Jewish calendar. The first 2 days are Rosh Hashanah, and the Jewish New Year culminates in Yom Kippur, which is the 10th day of Tishri. Tradition teaches us that our fate is written on Rosh Hashanah and is sealed on Yom Kippur. Let's start with Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah began the evening of Friday, September 18th, and continued until sunset on Sunday, September 20th. Greetings for Rosh Hashanah include Shana Tova, which is Hebrew, and means have a good year. The Shana Tova Tikatevu means may you be inscribed for a good year, and in Yiddish, a zis gesund yor means a sweet, healthy year. Rosh Hashanah means the beginning of the year. The Bible calls Rosh Hashanah the day of the sounding of the ram's horn. The shofar is made of a ram's horn. The shofar is a Jewish symbol that recalls when God allowed Abraham to replace his son with a ram for sacrifice. Also, it reminds us of the giving of the Ten Commandments, when a shofar was blown on Mount Sinai, and it symbolizes the unity of the Jewish people. Now let's learn about Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur begins at sunset, Sunday, September 27th, and continues until sunset on Monday, September 28th. Greetings for Yom Kippur include Gamar Chatima Tova or Gamar Tov, which is Hebrew, and it means, may you be sealed in the book of life. We do not wish people a happy holiday on Yom Kippur, since it is a somber and reflective day. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. Jewish people fast for 25 hours, while we reflect on our love of family, acts of kindness, and acts of forgiveness. We ask God to grant us another year of life and good health by sealing our name in the book of life for the coming year. A Yom Kippur message for everyone. To those I may have wronged, I ask forgiveness. To those who may have wronged me, I forgive you. To those I may have helped, I wish I did more. To those I neglected to help, I ask for understanding. And to those who helped me, I sincerely thank you so much. May you have an easy fast this Yom Kippur.
Hi, this is Dana. Welcome to Culture in a Minute. Because we're still in early fall with the opportunity to enjoy warm afternoons and picnics, I thought we'd take a look at one of the most popular picnics, Edward Manet's painting entitled The Luncheon on the Grass, which you can see here on your screen. Edward Manet was a Paris-born French painter who played a prominent role in the art scene of 19th century Europe by bridging the gap between realism and Impressionism. And The Luncheon on the Grass, which was painted in 1863, is an example of this. The theme of this painting is relatively ordinary. 2 female subjects and 2 male subjects sharing a picnic, which is represented in a still life in the lower left-hand corner. However, the fact that one female is nude is a peculiar detail in this painting. Although female nudes are common throughout the history of art, they had, up until The Luncheon on the Grass, always represented figures from mythology or allegory. The composition of this painting is inspired by 2 16th century works of art, the Pastoral Concert and the Judgment of Paris. So in addition to this groundbreaking subject matter and the Italian-inspired composition, this painting is also renowned for its size, which is 81 by 104 inches. That's pretty big. Until Manet, artists typically reserved canvases of this size for academic paintings inspired by allegory, history, and mythology. But by using a canvas this large, Manet was validating seemingly mundane subjects. And today, The Luncheon on the Grass remains Manet's most famous painting.
Hello everyone, it's so wonderful to see all of you today. I'm Diane Eisenhower and I'm so excited to share some music with you today. The theme this week is autumn's arrival. So I decided to start recording outside as we talk about the end of summer and the beginning of fall. One of my favorite things about autumn's arrival is the cooler weather. We finally lose the humidity of summer, but still have warm, sunny days and cooler evenings. Another one of my favorite things about autumn's arrival is the beautiful changes in the color of the leaves. While I do prefer the green of summer, I really enjoy the red, yellow, and orange shades of the leaves in autumn. And again, while I love melons, berries, tomatoes, corn, and other produce that are available during the summer, I also enjoy the bounty of the different vegetables we can get in the fall. I love all the different squashes: spaghetti squash, butternut squash, acorn squash, and of course, pumpkins. I love to make soup with them, and I love to roast all these different squashes. I also love apples and making applesauce and apple dumplings from the many varieties of apples that are available in the fall. So take a moment to think about what some of your favorite things are about the coming of fall and discuss them with your family members and friends. Perhaps some of you also enjoy the cooler weather, or you're happy to get out some of your sweaters, or you enjoy having fires in the fireplace as we get the cooler weather, and especially in the evenings. As I share songs with you today, I hope they will spark some interesting conversations about how you feel about the coming of fall or what you are looking forward to with autumn's arrival. One of the first songs that comes to my mind when we're talking about the arrival of autumn is the song "Shine On, Harvest Moon." This is a romantic song popularized in the first part of the 20th century. Over the decades since, this song has been featured in many movies, including a 1938 Roy Rogers Western that was titled "Shine On Harvest Moon," the 1939 Laurel and Hardy film Flying Deuces, and in Pennies from Heaven, a TV miniseries that debuted in 1978. Now, often the September full moon is called the harvest moon, but unlike other full moon names, which are specific to their respective months, the harvest moon is tied specifically to the autumnal equinox. The full moon that falls nearest to the equinox, which this year is September 22nd, takes on the name harvest moon. So this year, we will have the harvest moon on October 1st. Now, most people know the chorus to this song, but do not necessarily know the verse. So before we sing this song together, I will sing the verse and the chorus for you, and then we will sing the entire song together 2 times. So I'm going to play a chord on my little keyboard, so I sing in the right key. So I'm just going to sing so you can hear this melody first. The night was mighty dark, so you could hardly see, for the moon refused to shine. Couple sitting underneath the willow tree, for love they did pine. Little maid was kind of scared of darkness, so she said, "I guess I'll go." Boy began to sigh, looked up to the sky, and told the moon his little tale of woe. And he sang, shine on, harvest moon, up in the sky. I ain't had no lovin' since January, February, June, or July. Snow time ain't no time to stay outdoors and spoon. So shine on, harvest moon, for me and my gal. All right, so now you know the tune and we can sing it together 2 times. I'm gonna play the chord here. The night was mighty dark. You can sing the verse with me, or you can just come in on the chorus. The night was mighty dark, so you could hardly see, for the moon refused to shine. couple sitting underneath the willow tree, for love they did pine. Little maid was kinda scared of darkness, so she said, I guess I'll go. Boy began to sigh, looked up to the sky, and told the moon his little tale of woe. And he sang, shine on, harvest moon, up in the sky. I ain't had no lovin' since January, February, June, or July. Snow time ain't no time to stay outdoors and spoon. So shine on, harvest moon, for me and my gal. The night was mighty dark, so you could hardly see, for the moon refused to shine. Couple sitting underneath the willow tree, for love they did pine. Little maid was kinda scared of darkness, so she said, I guess I'll go. Boy began to sigh, looked up to the sky, and told the moon his little tale of woe. And he said, shine on, harvest moon, up in the sky. I ain't had no lovin' since January, February, June, or July. Snow time ain't no time to stay outdoors and spoon. So shine on, harvest moon, for me and my gal. Thanks so much for joining in with me on the song Shine on Harvest Moon. I just love the unique melodies of both the verse and the chorus, and feel that it's a perfect song to sing any time of the year, but particularly in the fall. The next song I want to share with you is an echo song called Sipping Cider Through a Straw. I thought it was perfect for our theme of autumn's arrival, because being able to get all sorts of varieties of apples at the grocery store, at farmers markets, or going to orchards where you can pick your own certainly signifies the coming of autumn. And these days, while there are the traditional varieties like Red Delicious, Golden Delicious, and Granny Smith apples, there are so many varieties of apples. A few of the ones that I like to eat, but I also like the names, are Gala, Autumn Crisp, Ambrosia, Honey Crisp, Fuji, Pippin, Stamen, and one of my favorites, because it's a music name, is Jazz Apples. And there are so many things that we can make with apples. We can have apple cider, apple juice, spiced cider where we add some cinnamon and cloves to the cider. We can make apple dumplings, scalloped apples, apple pies, apple cobblers. The list is endless. So this song, as I said, is an echo song, and I'm going to demonstrate what I mean by singing the first verse and echoing it myself. I sing a part, and then you sing it back to me, and then we string the words together at the end. So I'm going to get the key. I'm looking down on my keyboard. Dun. So it goes like this. The prettiest girl I ever saw, was sipping cider through a straw, Now we put them all together. The prettiest girl I ever saw was sipping cider through a straw. And that's how the whole song goes. It has several verses. I'll sing and you echo back. And this is Sipping Cider Through a Straw. 1, ready, sing. The prettiest girl I ever saw, was sipping cider through a straw, through a straw. The prettiest girl I ever saw was sipping cider through a straw. I said to her, what you doing that for? What you doing that for? A sipping cider through a straw, through a straw. I said to her, what you doing that for? A sipping cider through a straw. First cheek to cheek, then jaw to jaw, We both sipped cider through a straw, through a straw. First cheek to cheek, then jaw to jaw. We both sipped cider through a straw. Every now and then, that straw would slip, and we'd sip cider, lip to lip, lip to lip. Every now and then, that straw would slip, and we'd sip cider, lip to lip. That's how I got my mother-in-law, by sipping cider through a straw, through a straw. That's how I got my mother-in-law, by sipping cider through a straw. Isn't that such a clever and funny song? I really like it because I like the melody and I like how it's humorous, and it reminds me, of course, of apples and the autumn, the arrival of autumn. I hope you really enjoyed that song too, and I'm so glad that you joined in singing it with me. The next song I want to share with you is Autumn Leaves. This song is totally, obviously appropriate for autumn's arrival. Probably the most famous recording of this song is by Nat King Cole. So take a moment to think about the kinds of trees you've had in your yards over the years, and which trees you enjoyed watching the leaves change on. Perhaps you had maple, elm, or oak trees, or maybe you enjoyed seeing the pine cones grow on your evergreens. Or perhaps you prefer fall flowers like chrysanthemums that come in many shades of yellow, orange, maroon, rust, and red. Before we sing this song, I will read the words, and then we will sing it through one time. The falling leaves drift by the window, the autumn leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. Since you went away, the days grow long, and soon I'll hear old winter's song. But I miss you most of all, my darling, when autumn leaves start to fall. Since you went away, the days grow long, and soon I'll hear old winter's song. But I miss you most of all, my darling, when autumn leaves start to fall. So I'm going to play this song with my keyboard. Ready? The falling leaves drift by the window, the autumn leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. Since you went away, the days grow long, and soon I'll hear old winter's song. But I miss you most of all, my darling, when autumn leaves start to fall. Since you went away, the days grow long, and soon I'll hear old winter's song. But I miss you most of all, my darling, when autumn leaves start to fall. When autumn leaves start to fall. Thanks so much for making music with me today. I really enjoyed our time together and look forward to next time. So I will say goodbye for now as we say hello to autumn's arrival. See you next time.
Hi everyone, I'm Rosie, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make apple crisp for two. So starting out with our materials that we need. So you're going to need a big mixing bowl, a spoon, you're going to need a measuring cup, a knife and a cutting board, and a plastic bag. So if you guys need to pause right now to get your materials, now would be a good time. Okay, so here's what you're going to need for your ingredients. So in your bowl, you're going to need oats, you're going to need whole wheat pastry flour, or you can just use regular white flour. You're going to need cinnamon, brown sugar, and oil. And then for the ingredients for your Ziploc bag, you're going to need cinnamon, flour, it could be either one. You're going to need sugar, and you're going to need apples. Now you're just going to mix in all your ingredients together. So next we're going to mix together our ingredients that are going in our plastic bag. So I put my plastic bag in a big measuring cup like this to help it stand up while I mix my ingredients. So first I'm starting out with a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/2 tablespoon of all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon of sugar, I'm using brown sugar, and then you're just going to close your bag and mix this really well. So next you're going to prep your apples. So I like to core my apples, and then I like to slice them in 1/4 inch slices like this. There's 2 people cooking. One of you guys can prep the ingredients and one of you guys can shake. So now I'm just adding my apples into my plastic bag, closing the bag, and shaking until everything's coated. And finally, you're gonna bake your apple crisp in an oven set to 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 35 minutes.
Hi, my Kensington family and friends. I am supposed to do sports in a minute, but that's not going to happen, not in a minute. And there's not much in my mind right now to talk about sports. With the COVID-19 virus, I find it all very boring. So I'm going to do a segment all about Ellis, and I'm going to go back a ways. When I was 8 or 9 years old, I guess that was around 1960, 61, I fell in love with baseball, and particularly the Washington Senators, the expansion team. the year before they had moved the original centers to Minnesota. So I started following baseball for, I guess, 10 years until that expansion Washington Senators team moved to Texas. And after many, many years of being promised we would get a team back in Washington, D.C., I gave up. I didn't follow baseball, I didn't watch it, nothing. And then one year I went to a minor league baseball game in Alexandria called the Alexandria Dukes. And I sat there through the game and I said, oh, this isn't baseball, and gave up again. In 1983, a friend of mine from work, he asked me to go to the ball game up in Baltimore. I had never been a Baltimore Oriole fan, but I went anyway with him. It was a Friday night and they were playing the New York Yankees, and the Orioles beat them. And I enjoyed it so much that I went back the next night by myself to watch the Orioles play the Yankees, and again they beat the Yankees. And that year they went to the Orioles went to the World Series. And after that, the following year, 1984, my friend Brian and I bought a partial baseball plan game, 29 game plan. And we went to 29 games that year at the old Memorial Stadium. And we kept going year after year after year. But the Orioles started being a losing team. And every spring training, my old boss at Giant, Jim Parker, would call me and say to me, please don't renew your tickets because they haven't played well since you started going to their games. And I blew him off. I said, well, I'm still going, and it's not my fault. I didn't think. Anyway, I kept going for years and years, and finally I just stopped going. So if I was the reason that the Baltimore Orioles couldn't win, well, then blame me. But the sad thing is, or the funny thing is, the moment I stopped going to the games, they started winning again. And although they never went to a World Series, they did go to the playoffs a few times. And then, of course, don't ask me what year, 1990, 93, they brought back the Washington Nationals, which I became a fan of theirs, and the Orioles. And my son, who was a big Oriole fan, kept saying to me, how can you root for both teams? And at that time I said, well, of course they both are losers, and I like to root for the losing teams. And then last year the Washington Nationals won the World Series, and I'm so happy. And that's it for my 1-minute presentation, which probably took 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. Stay well, my friends, and be safe. Bye.
Hi, it's Laugh with Sharon, and this week's theme is fall. And as you can see, I have my pumpkin and my gourd and my beautiful mom and my leafy earrings, and also some fabulous jokes for you. A married daughter calls her mom. Hello, Ma? Shirley, darling, what's the problem? Oh, Ma, I don't know where to start. Both of the kids have the flu and are home from school. The refrigerator has just broken down. The sink is leaking, and in 2 hours, my bridge group is coming over for lunch. What should I do? Shirley, darling, don't worry. I'm going to get on the bus and I'm going to go into the city. Then I'll take the train out to Long Island. Then I'll walk the 2 miles from the station to your house. I'll take care of the kids. I'll cook a nice lunch for your bridge group. And I'll even make dinner for Barry. Barry? Who's Barry? Barry, your husband. But Ma, my husband's name is Gary. Is this 555-2093? No, this is 555-2903. Does this mean you're not coming over? After married for 30 years, a wife asked her husband, describe me. He looked at her and he said, you're A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. She said, well, what does that mean? You're adorable, beautiful, cute, delightful, elegant, foxy, gorgeous, hot. She said, oh, that's so lovely. And what about I, J, K? He said, I'm just kidding. His eye is still swollen, but it will get better. Morris and his wife went to the state fair every fall. And every year Morris would say, Esther, I'd like to ride in that airplane. And she'd say, I know, Morris, but that airplane ride is $50. And $50 is $50. So one year in the fall, Ellis and Morris went to the fair. And Morris said, Esther, I'm 85 years old. If I don't ride in that airplane now, I'll never get another chance. Morris, that airplane ride is $50, and $50 is $50. The pilot overheard the couple and said, folks, I'll make you a deal. I'll take you both for a ride. And if you stay quiet for the entire ride and not say a word, I won't charge you. But if you say one word, it's $50. So they agreed. They went up in the plane. The pilot thought, oh, I'm going to have some fun, and did all kinds of fancy maneuvers and daredevil tricks, but not a word, nothing. When they landed, the pilot turned around, and there was Morris, but no Esther. He said, what happened to Esther? He said, well, to tell you the truth, she fell out a while ago, and I almost said something, but $50 is $50. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kensington Club Gym. Today, our workout is called Soup Can Strength. You'll need a sturdy chair, 2 soup cans, and a glass of water. Okay, let's get started. With your feet firmly planted on the ground, we're going to do some shoulder rolls to loosen up a little bit. Roll your shoulders back and back. Great. Should feel good on your back. Roll forward and forward again. Nice. Now we're going to do one at a time. Roll one shoulder back and the other shoulder back. Great. One shoulder back and the other shoulder back. Good. Both shoulders back. Now let's grab our soup cans. With both soup cans in front of you, we're going to do some bicep curls. And lift those cans one at a time. You're strengthening your biceps. Great. Just take turns, lifting your hands with your can and each hand. Very good. Lift as much as you want, as quickly as you want. There you go. Good. This next move is a little tricky. We're going to add a leg with our lift. Lift your leg and your arms. Lift. Yep, so it's just a bicep curl and we're adding a leg. There you go. We're lifting both arms and one leg, both arms and one leg. Good. You should feel this in your core. There you go. Just switch off legs, lifting arms and one leg. Great. Now it's time for crunches with one can. Using one can, crunch down and meet your knee. So the can should touch your knee. You're kind of doing a seated sit-up or a seated crunch. Side to side with one can. Great. Lift your knee, crunch down, and touch your knee with the can. Now it's time for the can handoff. So with the same can you just used for your crunches, we're going to hand off that can from one hand to the other over our heads. So we're passing the can, flexing our muscles, passing the can. So you're just passing the can back and forth over your head. Be sure to flex your biceps, just like our model. There you go. Great. Let's take a water break. Get a nice big drink of water. There you go. Okay, back to our exercises. We are marching in place with our cans. So you should have a can in each hand, and you're marching, marching, marching in place. And if at any point this is going too fast for you, you can pause the video and continue the move with the video paused. Great. Marching. Wonderful. Finally, we're going to stretch out our arms. So you can hold one hand out in front of you and pull your fingers back. Good. And the other hand out in front of you, pull your fingers back. You should feel a stretch. And hold your other hand out. Pull your fingers toward you, just like that. And the other hand, pull your fingers toward you, just like that. Very good. You did it. Thank you so much for joining us. Big shoulder roll, and we're done.